to Software Spotlight, your front row seat to the latest innovations in software for small business. I'm Michael Burnswag, your host, and each week we are joined by executives at leading software companies to get an insider's perspective on the emerging technologies, business strategies, and market trends shaping the future. Tune in to stay ahead of the curve on leveraging software to boost productivity and growth in your business. Be sure to visit our website, softwareoasis.com, to access our free weekly software newsletter and sign up for our upcoming software webinar series. Today, we're in for a treat. We're being joined by Tracy Hazard. She is the CEO of Podetize, a leading podcast production and hosting platform. With over 1,000 podcasts launched, Tracy shares insights on how Podetize's SaaS and service model dramatically increased customer retention for clients. Her podcast program and promotion platform helps podcasters raise awareness for their show, growing audiences by 10 to 50% month over month. So, with that, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Michael. I'm so glad that I get to talk software. And it's a little bit geeky, but I don't get to talk like enough in the details when I get to talk podcasters. They're all about their vision. But
I
let's talk
love
about
it.
the nitty gritty that makes it work, right?
Yeah, no, and at a high level, our community is so engaged and excited about learning about the tech behind what makes a lot of the different platforms tech. So, really excited to have you on the podcast.
Well, I'm glad to be here.
So, if you could share with us just a little bit about yourself and your journey and the solution.
Well, Tom and I, my partner and husband, we started out as podcasters. We had a design business that we had been in for 20 years, where we design products for mass market retail, consumer products that you buy every day at Costco, Walmart, Target, places like that. And so we
Sure.
started this work that we did in 3D printing, really geeky. and it was just something we had done as a part of prototyping, as part of our business. And we started to realize how hard it was. The technology itself was difficult, and it needed some combination of cheerleader and tech support, like just to make it through. And
Sure.
so that's what we decided we wanted to do. We wanted to provide some kind of information, coaching, resources, because people kept coming to us and saying, "Wow, your Instagram looks so good. Like, how did you do that?" Or that YouTube video you put together in time lapse, that's amazing. How did you do that? And so we were like, maybe we need to talk about this. And as I was exploring it, I had been listening to a lot of podcasts, and this is about 2014.
Sure.
And I'm pregnant with my youngest child, and so I had a lot of time on my off with my legs up listening to podcasts. And I was like, you know what? There's a big gap here in podcasting. All of the 3D print podcasts and the tech podcasts were all about news, but not about how to or resources or just exploring ideas and having conversations with startups who in the industry. So that's how we started. And so we decided we do it. It took us about 6 months to launch and figure out what we were going to do with our podcast. But within 5 months of starting the WTFFF, which is the geeky term for 3D printing, fused filament
Yeah.
fabrication, right?
I love it. I love it. It's
Right
a
after
great name.
starting that, 5 months later, we had 100,000 listeners. And
That's
people were
fantastic.
coming out at us and going like, how did you do that? How is your show so big already? What are you doing that's different than what we're doing? And I said, well, we're doing video, which most people weren't doing back then. We were doing
Right.
not video like you and I are doing right now. We were doing like video accessories. Like, I don't know how to explain it. They were like,
Yeah.
send them to a video to see the thing we're talking about, right? And it would just be the
Right.
print running on the machine or something like that. And so it was like a compliment to the episode, but it wasn't the actual recording of it. And then
Sure.
so there was video, audio, blog. So we created a full blog for everything we did. And we were really pretty decent at social sharing graphics and all kinds of things, and our,
You were ahead
shouting
of
out
your
to our
time.
customers. So we were doing this all in one, and everyone was like, that's too much work. Here's my credit card. Will you do it for me? I literally had my first 10 people shoved their credit card at us and said, will you please just do it? And I was like,
Sure.
well, I think we can handle 10 people with the staff I had built to do this.
Right.
And so we did. And then they kept begging to refer more people. And so we said, okay, I think we better take this seriously and turn it into something. But that's when I said, stop. I don't want to have another service business. I had a service business doing design consulting, and it was really lucrative, and it was going to
Right.
be distracting to do this
You can
sort of
always make
smaller.
money, but
Right.
you
Yeah.
need
I
to
was like,
follow
I
your
don't want to,
passion.
that's a big
Yeah.
production staff to have. And I don't
Yeah.
have to do that with my design consulting, and because I would make royalties. Right. So like it was really easier. It was a different type of business. And so I said,
Right.
I don't want to do that. But right at that moment, we had come to a critical point in our podcast where we were having advertisers come to us and ask us to take advertisements. And so we would get like, and we would charge them like $5,000 to $10,000 a month. Like we were not doing it for cheap. And
Sure.
they would come to us and they would say, we want to run ads, and we want to run it about, a special 3D print that you helped design for us. And then it's an example of how our machine runs, stuff like that. And Hewlett Packard came to us and said, we want to run a special series of 25 episodes where and I charge them a lot more than 10,000, but a 25
I love
episode
it.
series.
Smart.
Yeah. A 25 episode series where you sponsor it and you get behind the scenes interviews with people we don't let normally come on camera and talk with.
Right.
And so
Right.
it was like
Very
that
unique.
model. And so I went to my son-in-law, who was one of our video editors at the time, and I said, hey, he was doing video and audio for us. I said, hey, if I put an ad in, can I sell it for a month and then take it out later? And, can you do that? And he said, yeah, but it's going to cost you just as much as it did for me to process the episode the first time. And I said, are you kidding me? It's just deleting something. And then he's like, no, because you have to go through it and you have to like reprocess it, and it takes the machine
Right.
just as long to do it. And, and he's like, so it's really as much time consuming to load
It's like a
everything
whole
back
new
in and do
episode.
it all
Yeah.
and remove it. And I said, well, that's dumb. I'm not doing that. And I'm not paying for that to do these ads. And so I challenged my partner and husband, and I said, hey, Tom, we got to figure out something that we can do where we can drop an ad in and take it out. And it's in the middle of, or in the late part of the episode, because we had already discovered something that people are just starting to discover right now, is that if you put ads at the beginning of the show, they're a waste of time. But if you put them in the last third, they're really useful. And so that's where we usually put our ads, right at the end there. And
Sure.
so he looked at that and said, let me think about this. And so we started working with one of our friends who's kind of a hacker. And the two of them, within 2 weeks, came up with our ad mixing system that we still use in the early format, but we've
Sure.
refined it and gotten it to a place where you can literally drop your ads in, take them out within hours. And so it's completely baked in. It's anywhere you want it in it. It doesn't cut off people's words. Like it doesn't stream on the front and the back. And that's how we got started. And I said, okay, well, that's SaaS. We could sell that. And in order
Sure.
to deploy and do that, we had to become a hosting service. So in 2016, that's what we did. We became a hosting company. And we just started hosting at first. We were doing our production service and only hosting our clients who were using the production services. And then we let them beta test this for a year and a half. And so it wasn't until really about 2018, late 2017, early 2018, that we opened it up to the general public. And so we've been doing that sort of SaaS side of things since 2018. And what we offer just keeps expanding. Like we
Sure.
want to be more integrated with the production services that people need to do. So we provide integration in our do-it-yourself side of it and in our done-for-you side of it. So we call it a SaaS plus model, a SaaS plus service model.
So are a lot of the companies that are using the platform podcasters, or are they companies that want to advertise on the platform, or are they?
Yeah, so we don't have advertisers on our platform. We work with
Right.
third-party companies who do bring advertising and utilize our platform in that sense, but they
Right.
usually use it with a network. So we have a combination of, I'm going to call it like wholesale business, like, straight
Sure.
business to business, where there's a producer or a network owner, radio station that runs all of their independent podcasts underneath their umbrella, or their shows underneath their umbrella, and they
Sure.
deploy ads across all the shows.
Okay,
Or
so
the-
the technology allows you can take your whole back roll of episodes and
Yep.
insert an advertisement, pull an advertisement out, put a different ad in.
Yep, you
That
can
that
block
type of
episodes so that if you had a really sensitive episode that it really didn't make
Right.
sense to, like we had one on 3D print guns. Some advertisers don't want to be
Yeah.
associated with anything violent.
Makes a lot
So,
of sense.
so you can do brand protection that way. So yes, so you can do it independently for yourself. And I would say 80% of what we have on our platform are independent entrepreneurs and podcast hosts who run their own show, but they typically have a business running with the show.
Right.
So they're not really advertising third-party ads. It's not enough money. It's
Right.
never
Yeah.
worth it for them.
No.
They're really advertising their own programs, their own webinars, their own books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes a
So
lot of
that's kind
sense.
of our specialty, is that type of business to business podcast.
No, and that makes a lot of sense. And it's a very exciting concept because, I would agree with you right there. I mean, having, one-off advertisements across a podcast doesn't really add enough to make it worthwhile for a podcaster to, at a small scale. And obviously, once a podcaster is scaled up to a reasonable volume of episodes and a reasonable volume of subscribers, then obviously it's a different level of interest, but
Right.
that's in a mass media.
Right. And I think that it's a mistake most podcast hosting companies or podcast producers make, that the podcast is enough. That's what we discovered in the very beginning. If you look at any of the shows that are really popular, including Joe Rogan's, they had video, they had social following, they have an email list, they have a more robust system. It's
Sure.
not just the podcast that works,
It's a
because there's
component
not
of,
enough money right
yeah.
there.
Yeah,
Right?
it's a component of everything they're doing. Makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense. And, at a high level, I think podcasting and podcasters in general it's a very deep and engaging medium. And it's an amazing way, whether it's thought leadership or what have you, that a company is looking to get out there. I think it's a really unique format that's underutilized in terms of,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Well, I mean, just
absolutely.
an example, on our 3D print podcast, we used to get upwards of 37% conversion rates on the call to action from the ads.
Right.
So you're talking about, like, I mean, these were not easy ads. Some of those ads were like, go to our website, fill out a form, and we'll physically mail you something like a 3D print. And so, like, that was some of the offers that we had. And we would still have 37% of our listeners go there and do it.
Yeah,
Like,
no,
that's
it's
just a
hardcore,
crazy
and
numbers.
I think a lot of executives don't get it.
Right.
They're listening to podcasts, and let's face it, a lot of people, even though a podcast, our podcast goes out across a whole bunch of different platforms, Spotify, YouTube, Apple, all the different platforms. But I would say that most people are listening to podcasts, even though they might have the video, playing. They're more than likely just listening to the podcast in the background, and the level of engagement though is off the charts. And I think that's
I know, it's
really
my favorite part about podcasting is, like, when you can have a podcast that only has 100 listeners per episode
just takes one.
and do
Yeah.
tremendous amount of money. I have some that, maybe do 1,000 an episode, and they make tens of thousands in a month off of selling their coaching or their courses.
Well,
So,
I'll
like,
share with
it's
you. We
yeah.
we have our finance webinar that we had a few weeks ago, and you know not a huge number of people had attended. But one of the companies on the webinar booked a substantial client off of that webinar. And at the end of the day, it's stories like that I continue to hear, across platforms, across podcasters, across industries, that makes it really exciting. Can you give us an example of maybe some clients that are on the platform and some of the success that they've seen and what it looks
Yeah,
like?
absolutely. So, we have a lot of clients in fintech and in real estate. Those are probably our two largest categories that I would say that we have. And typically, one of those client bases, what they run, uh, the show is the informational, like, early lead generation, if you want to think it's the top of the funnel.
Top of the funnel.
Right?
Exactly.
So they might be sending out random emails or running ads, but they're sending them to the podcast first, which is very unusual. Most people will try to send them straight to a webinar first.
Right.
They've found that going straight to the podcast first is the best way to go. So we
Sure.
typically see that happen. And then that top of the podcast started gets them to subscribe somewhere. So we teach our clients specifically never to send them to Apple, never to send them to Spotify, never to send them to YouTube, to only send them to your website. to only
Sure.
send them to one landing page, one thing that you repeat. You don't let any guests tell them where to go otherwise. No .coms ever aired anywhere else but your .com. And you
Sure.
do that so that they go back there. And when they get there, they're always served up a little pop-up form that says, hey, do you want the best tips on this? And do you want the, this on that? And they pop up and they sign up because they do want more. So get free downloads, do something like that. So now they enter that next level of funnel where they're really on the email list, basically, or on some kind of like, now I know you, because we don't know our podcast subscribers. Apple doesn't let us know them. Spotify doesn't tell us. They tell us how many followers, but it's really how many people liked our podcast, not how many people really listened to it. So
Exactly.
it's a mistake, and it's a mistaken number that doesn't have any direct connection. So we got to get them off the podcast and somewhere else. So when you get them into that next stage, now you can make them some kind of offer. And of course, when you're on the show, you make them that same offer. This is what we teach our clients to do, is to match the offers that you say on air with the offers that you're doing in email. So that you might be doing on social. All your offers everywhere should be matched at the same time. And that's why the ability to take it in and take it out, to put it in and take it out on a monthly basis, gives you a lot more flexibility. It gives you an ability to bring something in that's themed for that month or whatever it is you're currently working. Because let's face it, us entrepreneurs, we try lots of different things, different messaging.
Sure.
We need to A/B test everything, right? And so this is one of the best ways to do that. So that's how we usually do that. We always also teach our clients to offer some kind of event at some point. It depends on where they are in the scope of it. If you've been podcasting a year or more, 50 episodes or more, because you could also do that faster if you do more than one episode a week. But when you hit about 50 episodes, that's about the time you want to try an event or some other kind of like webinar, special coaching, special private group. You want to try something like that to see your conversion rate directly from the show itself on a time sensitive. So like, I'm going to offer this in the next week. I put it into my entire show catalog, so it doesn't matter which episode number they're on, but I'm offering this only, and it's happening on this particular day next week. And that way we're sure that we see what their initiative is. So we can see the action level, the engagement level of our audience. That's the next thing we want to test before we do too many things. So if our podcast is truly just a lead generator warm up, then we need to leave it at that stage. But if it's really a conversionary event, like I'm influencing them and getting them to buy something or do something, I want to know that. And so, but it will take about 50 episodes before you have enough influence to start to ask for that and get like enough relevant numbers to shift into that. That's what we find. And so that's very typical. And then the second model that we have is the guest model. And so I call it the guest funnel model. And the guest funnel model is simply that you go out there to LinkedIn, to email, to whatever it is, but you would lead generate by soliciting someone to be a guest on your show. Now, you're not making them pay for anything or do anything. This is your ideal client, and you want to have a conversation with them. And so in exchange for giving them publicity, you're building a relationship, and you expect to ask them for, a little time at the end, right?
Sure.
And so then we have a conversation about things. We have a great time on air. You've given me publicity. And now maybe we want to have that follow-up sales call. Sometimes it's not right. Sometimes as you're talking, you're like, this is not the right person for me. Great interview, but this is not going to make a great client for me. And you don't make that offer. Right. But, and so I do this. I have a show called The Binge Factor, and I interview podcast hosts. I profile them. I have an exact profile of who I'm looking for. I'm looking for someone with 100 episodes or more. I'm looking for someone who consistently publishes one a week, not seasons, not anything like that. And they have to be in business, finance, real estate, like some of those entrepreneurship style genres. Yeah,
so you get
true crime, right?
You know exactly your ICP.
Yeah. Right. And what I do is I reach out to them and say, hey, I'd love you. You've reached 100 episodes. Congratulations. You're in the elite podcaster realm. I'd love to have you on my show and feature you alongside all these other podcasters. And I name a bunch. And just come on the show. We're going to talk about your show and what it's doing for your business. And in exchange, I'm going to give you an article, a blog, a video shorts, social posts, like all of this is going to come for you. And they're like, oh, fantastic. They sign up for my show. We have a great time on air. at the end of the call, I'll say, while I was researching you, and it's obvious on the show that I listened to their show, I checked out their whole thing, like it comes across when I'm interviewing. I will say, I had these 3 things that I noticed that you're not doing right about your show. And I want to make sure that, these are silly little technical things, but your hosting company is harming you, or they're stealing your authority, or some setup piece that you have on your show is keeping you from being syndicated properly to Spotify. We can fix that
Sure.
instantly. Let me give you a video on how to do it.
Yeah. So adding some value.
Yeah. And so I give back. It's kind of like a little audit. And I say, hey, if you'd like a full appraisal of your show, my partner, Tom, will do that for you in no obligation. You don't have to buy from us to do it. My conversion rate on me making that offer to someone that I think would be good for us, not in selling them a service, but just hosting and our SaaS part of our program, is 80% conversion. So if I invite them to that appraisal call, 80% convert.
That's
because
crazy.
I've given so much to them. They're like, why am I not a part of your community?
Right. And I think that's a big thing, no matter what type of business you have, no matter what industry you're in, giving without expectation. And, sometimes it comes full circle, and, all it takes is that one person to, connect and
Well, I'm a bigger
understand.
fan of it because it gives me an opportunity. I mean, one of the reasons we have such high retention rate on our platform, and our podcasters keep podcasting well past the average. So the industry is about 80% quit rate, somewhere between 73 and 80% quit rate on the show. That means
Sure.
that 20 to 30% of podcasters stick it out past 25 episodes.
Wow.
That's pretty bad. Like,
Yeah, it's
you start
crazy.
something and you're
Crazy
going to
bad.
quit before you ever get the return, because the return really won't come for about 50 episodes. Like the serious return on what value it's bringing to your business and to you, you won't see it for almost a year. It's hard for a lot of people. They're just not good with the marathon. They want the
Yeah,
sprint,
no,
right?
exactly. And it's the same thing with SEO. At the end of the day, a lot of companies think that it's going to be a quick hit, quick
And
fix,
then it's not,
and
and it
it
doesn't work
never
like that.
is. It's
Yeah.
something, it takes time, and
Right.
it's
So
a
our
journey.
clients, the flip of that, our clients we only have about a 10% quit rate.
Wow.
So our clients make it 100 episodes or more very commonly. And it's really because we provide a community of questions and answers and services, and if you host and pay $29 a month with us, you get coaching every single week live with
Wow.
Tom and I. So with 2 experts, you can ask any questions of. So there's like always something that's giving a service in conjunction and support, so that they don't feel left alone. So if they can't figure out, like, I can't figure out how to market on Instagram, what's your suggestion? Oh, well, let's say we have these 10 clients. We could go ask them for you, and we'll
Yeah,
get you
and
an
you've
answer,
been
right?
there,
I
you've
don't know.
done
I'm
that,
not an expert. Yeah.
yeah. There's a lot of a lot to be said for having been in the trenches and having done it on your own and being able to advise someone the right path to
Yeah,
take.
and that support though makes the difference. And I think too often a lot of SaaS companies, especially business to business SaaS, they're like, we get you in here and we sell this thing to you, but you're on your own to configure it and figure it all out. And that's a daunting, overwhelming task. And so if we can bring someone in and help them get it done right, that in that setup piece, and get it done right, and support every decision that they're making. So every time they're sitting there ruminating about a question, they're not going to go, okay, it's not worth it anymore, I can't figure this out, and throw their hands up and quit. They're going to say, no, this is worth staying in for. I made progress. I got to the next stage. I got my question answered. I'm ready to go again on the next thing. So that's really what we wanted. What we've discovered over time was the key to what we were doing, was really keeping that open for everyone, and doing it in a way that it wasn't just podcast specific, because you have business strategy things to think about and how podcasting fits into that. So by
Sure.
being able to handle those entrepreneurship things in addition to the technical things, being able to do both was key for us.
Makes a lot of sense. So can you walk me through like the day in the life of one of your clients using your platform and what it's all about?
So most of my clients, like I said, are in this business to business realm. So they used to speak a lot on stages.
Right.
Today, I used to travel 3 to 4 weeks out of the month, or like most of the year, at least 10 months of the year, I was traveling somewhere giving a speech.
Right.
I go twice a year now, and I do almost everything else through my podcast or online here. So if you can speak to 30 people a week who are your exact right audience, who chose to listen to you, wouldn't that be better? That's exactly what we're teaching our clients to do. So we're saying, we're not asking you to do a webinar every week. We don't want you to be doing a webinar. But if you could speak to your ideal clients about what their biggest problem was, or introduce them to someone amazing doing something great in their in your industry or in your sector, as an example, a case study, you should do that. So one really great example of that is Michelle Seiler Tucker. She's got the show Exit Rich.
Right.
It's also her book. And Michelle is one of the largest business brokers. She sold the most businesses in the SMB space, in the small business to medium-sized business space. So
Sure.
she sold thousands of companies. So she's an expert in this, but she also knows a tremendous amount of people in food services and architecture and all kinds of people who might want to sell their companies. And so she brings someone on each week who might inspire them to go public, someone who might inspire them to sell their company, who's ready to retire or dealing with health issues and really needs to prep their company up to sell it so that they don't lose everything. And so she can bring that into the space. Additionally, she'll do that twice a month. She'll do something like that where she'll bring somebody in, and twice a
Sure.
month, she'll introduce them to somebody who is an entrepreneur, who, has really looked at a fast growth plan, who's maybe doing something in marketing that could really amp up a part of your business that might be weak, because she knows she has this 7P process, and she knows people and profit and some of those areas you might be weak in.
Right.
So she's giving you advice in between. And if she doesn't bring in an expert, she will talk about it because she is an expert. And so she'll give some solo advice about things that you might need to know, things that will be, as she calls it, hair on the deal, right? That will kill
Yeah.
your deal. She can talk about those things. And so that works really well for her.
She's had that lived experience, which is
Yes.
so
And she's a
important.
brilliant speaker on stage anyway. But this, she had a lot of personal tragedy that has happened to her over the last couple of years. She lost her husband, and she's a single mom now. And so she's got a lot going on in her personal life. And she's honest with it. So I know saying this is that she tells about it, talks about it on air.
Yeah.
So
No.
so
And
she shares that story. And so for her being able to be behind the mic and not have to be out giving speeches all the time is essential to the way she needs to run her business right now.
yeah, and brings to mind, one of my favorite podcasts, the guys over at My First Million. I'm not sure if you've listened to
Yes.
Sam Parr and Shane Puri. Those guys have a lot of fun, chatting about every type of entrepreneurship and deals, and different wins and pitfalls and all kinds of stuff. So
Well,
yeah, I
and
mean,
now, and just think about this. So you can always shift your show. So she's like 150 episodes in or something like that. I think it might be 180, but she's pretty far into her show now. And we just actually had a conversation this last week about her shifting the show and profiling a slightly different person than she happens to have this niche where she gets a lot of shark tankers who
sure.
maybe got deals or didn't get deals, but then she's going to help them sell their company. And so it's the perfect model. So for her to be able to talk to someone about what happened on the tank is kind of an insight, and people want to hear about it. But what it does is it drives a lot of referrals to her. And
Sure.
that's where she really makes her money. So she isn't making her money off of her listeners necessarily. They're exploring. They're out there. They're trying to say, what is it going to take for me to sell my business? Is, where am I in it? Like things like that. They're at a very different stage. But the
So it's
people
her
who
top
she's
of
talking,
funnel, basically,
yeah, it
at
is her
the end
top
of
of
the
funnel, but
day.
it's
Yeah.
her referral top of funnel. And that's the difference, right? Because those people are going to refer them to somebody else so if I was the Shark Tanker on there, and I'm not ready to sell my business, but I'm in a community of Shark Tankers, and there's a Facebook group for them, and
Sure.
they all talk amongst themselves. They go like, oh, you're ready to sell? I've got the perfect person to refer you to. She interviewed me on her show, and it was fantastic. So that's kind of the model where I typically see that with my financial managers, my real estate. It's a referral based program that is going to end up making them the money. So it really is their guest that matters in that process. So everything they do has to be around making sure that they're giving that guest really great promotion value, giving them an audience exposure, and that your audience is matched for them. Because if it's a waste of their time, then it's not really a good fit.
Yeah, no, and I totally get it. It makes me think of Marcus Lemonis from The
Yeah.
Prophet. Same focus. But and I'm sure you've listened to some of the episodes. We've had some amazing executives and amazing
You have.
guests on the
Yes.
on the software spotlight. So it's really a blessing to be able to connect with a lot of top tier talent. A lot of
Yeah.
entrepreneurs and people that have amazing stories to tell, and a long journey, and successes and failures. I think it's not just the successes that
The
everyone needs to
failures,
hear.
definitely. Well, in like my corporate clients typically come to me because they have had a lot of failure where they started. So either they started their podcast internally, a lot of them do that, and then then whoever was managing it leaves, and now they have no one and they can't figure out what to do. So they come to us. So like that's very common for us. So we get a lot of corporations, hospitals, nonprofits that way. That sort of corporate model is a little bit different because their model is brand and employee awareness. So their job is to retain their employees and get new ones, be interested in them. And the podcast really works well for that. And that's what we hear again and again. It's like it gets people excited about what you're really about as a company. So when they can hear executives or the top of the company talking about what this is all about, it makes it more real to them. And
Yeah.
so employee retention can get really high that way. I don't think we're still doing it, but we did a Coca-Cola podcast that was really interesting. It was a private podcast because it was only for drivers on the road filling vending machines. And this was
Oh,
like
I love
almost
it.
it. Yeah, it was like, I think our first year we did this podcast.
Sure.
And I loved the model of it because it was the perfect media, like to do a podcast so they
They're
could
on the
listen to
road.
it while they're on
They
the
have
road
time,
was
right?
just ideal. And
Yeah.
they would give out valuable company information because these guys and women and men never came back into the corporate offices to get their messages or anything. And so they couldn't be sure they'd read their emails. So this is the way they reached them, and they let them know what was going on and let them know how things were doing and what was coming up, if there was going to be a new big, Pepsi promotion that they needed to compete against, and what they were going to do, and if they, should report
And
back after filling a
yeah,
machine.
I would have to assume that a lot of those drivers are actually contractors in a way, right?
They are,
A lot of
yeah.
them are independent or running their own business, so they're business people too.
Yeah, exactly. And so this was great, and they used it, and it was completely informational, but the informational value, they could see how many were actually
Huge.
listening. It was huge for them. So we do see that a lot. We see donations rise a lot when the podcast is keeping the nonprofit donors informed. So it seems like a cost drain, but so a lot of our nonprofits, we help them figure out how to message it to get a sponsor for the podcast, to get somebody to donate enough money that it pays for the podcast itself. But the podcast itself does keep the donors donating year over year because they hear how their money is being deployed in real time. And so those are just some of the many models that I think work really well. My coaches are different though. If you're a coach, I recommend doing live coaching and doing it as lead generation, and then having your private community. Like, don't answer questions to all those people out there on live stream.
Sure.
Only answer questions in your Zoom
In your
room to the
sessions.
private
Yeah.
people. And
Yeah.
so we actually do this ourselves with our Feed Your Brand podcast. Is we broadcast live every week, and then we tell everyone on the live stream, hey, we're shutting this down, but if you were one of our clients and you were hosting on our platform, you could be asking us questions for the next 30 minutes. And
There's so much value to that.
so much value to that. So it gives you lead generation and nurturing your community at the same time. So you're accomplishing two things in one.
And I'm sure as an entrepreneur, this is not your first bite at the apple for entrepreneurship,
No,
right?
marketing and promotion is the hardest thing in any business. I used to give speeches to inventors all over because Tom and I hold 40 patents between the two of us, and we designed over 250 products that are at mass market retail. So we've done this for a really
Wow.
long time. So we give talks and speeches about this. And I'd be like, they're all worried about getting the money to afford their inventory. But the reality is that if they don't get the money to afford the marketing, they're never going to move that inventory. It's a waste
Right,
of money.
exactly. Yeah.
Right. So we have to figure out how to promote what we're doing, and growing that promotion. It's still the hardest thing for my podcasters, and still the hardest thing I think in podcasting, because Apple and Spotify block everything you want to do in terms of direct connection with your listeners. And there's no way to use the app to grow subscribers. So you've got to drive them from outside in. And that's really what we've been working on for the last year, is really working on promotion programs, because if they don't work, they're not worth it.
Yeah, and I would agree with you. I mean, none of the platforms are really there for you, and that's one of the reasons that all of our landing pages for our podcast are on our website.
And they
At
should
the
be.
end, and yeah, at the end of the day, what's the value to driving traffic for one of these platforms? It's
So
really,
we discovered
you
this
know,
early on, Michael,
yeah,
that we decided to, when we first started our hosting platform, we're actually the only hosting platform who shows you your website statistics and your podcast statistics side by side. So you can flip a
sure,
tab and look at, is my website growing? Am I growing in organic traffic and organic keywords? Because those are the two key factors that your podcast should drive if you're running any kind of blogs or you're running any kind of traffic. Those two things should be the reason that they're running to you, they're coming to you. And
sure,
so we do a high level integration and an API with Google on that. So it's not something you would have to sort through tons of analytics to get it. And we just made it very visible and
sure.
easy. So you could just take a quick glance and say, oh, wow. So
Here's
when
where I'm at.
somebody starts their podcast, in those first 25 episodes, their website will grow first before the podcast statistics will grow enough that they feel like it's worth doing. And so
Sure.
that's how we also help retain people, is because we were showing them where their growth was really happening, and they're afraid for that to disappear. So it keeps them wanting to podcast because they're seeing tangible results.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I mean, the only channel that you own is your website and your email
Yes.
list. I mean, you tell me how many social media platforms want anyone to leave their platform,
Yeah.
right?
Their job is to dive you in deeper and serve you up something else and distract you, right?
Yeah,
It's yeah,
absolutely.
and there really isn't, and that's the one thing that I think we underestimate as business owners, is we underestimate the power of binging on our content. And you cannot do that in any social media platform except for, and I don't consider YouTube a social media platform completely. Like, it has a social aspect to it, but it's not
Sure.
completely. But YouTube and your website are really the only two places where you can keep a library of all your stuff that's simple and easy to find. Everything is sort of transitory. I mean, there's just like, it's in for 3 hours and then it's gone. And to find it, you have to really sort through everything. Like, if you have ever gone to anyone's Facebook page and tried to go through the videos, they're all like dates, not no
Yeah,
names, no information, even though they were in the post to begin with. You can't search and find anything.
right. No, I'm right there with you. Well, I mean, Software Oasis started back in 1998, so at the very, very beginning of the internet in
I know those days. We had a company that we did accessories for handheld computers. We built
sure.
a website, we built a shopping system, and you had to build it all from scratch back then. It was so much harder to do business.
Absolutely. And we actually started in September of 98, which is the same month if you look in the history books when Google started. And at the end of the day, at that time, Google was literally a directory. There was no advertising. They did not have YouTube. It was a
That's right.
very, very different world and a very
You know,
different
you still
time.
had to get in a
But
catalog somewhere for your
yeah,
software. Yeah,
yeah,
physical catalog.
absolutely.
Be
So it was
featured in a
just
magazine.
yeah, I mean, we had about 15 different software titles that we had developed that we sold directly by download or on a DVD.
On
People
a
could
DVD, on a
actually,
CD. Yep, I
yeah,
remember those days.
buy a software title on DVD. But things have changed dramatically, and
But
clearly,
they've changed and they've gotten less expensive, more accessible, and like more people can do this. But at the same time, there's so much more noise. And that's what I think it really takes, is like, how do I rise above the noise?
exactly,
And
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 generate something that's unique. And I
yeah,
think, that's probably at a deeper level when you look at AI. It's come full circle for a company like Google, where now they're being hit with so much regurgitated content that's not unique. How does a company like Google figure out how to filter out the noise of content that doesn't serve the search intent of their users. And I think that's a big challenge
But I
that they're
think if there's
working on right
anyone,
now.
and
Yeah,
I do, we've been working in AI since 2018. So we've been working, we started early in AI with AI transcriptions, and
sure,
because we would build these blogs for people. And so we've been doing this for quite some time. And I have to say that the transcription system, the voice to text, has not gotten better at any other company. And when we switched to Google, we saw a significant increase in its value and its improvement in terms of it getting it. It's still not
sure.
there. It still needs a lot of work. We are lucky in our company because we've done over 50,000 episodes for all of our clients. So we have a human edited version and the transcription that came from the AI. So we can compare and contrast and teach our AI to be smarter faster. So
Yeah,
we
and
teach
that
it industry
knowledge bank,
lingo,
yeah,
right?
that's
Yeah, it's
unbelievable.
the learning layers that are coming on there. So I actually have spent a lot of time playing with all the different AI systems and trying to understand where their strengths are, what's going on, and we have a federated approach to it. So sometimes we typically use Gemini, Google Bard, Gemini, whatever they
Sure.
call it now, Google's version. We
Yeah.
use that to title episodes. We used to use Chat GPT in the early days, but we really found that they didn't improve. And what happened with Chat GPT is that the titles would start to all sound exactly alike after a while.
Right.
But
Yeah.
with Gemini, they don't. They understand uniqueness and they understand keywords, and they understand that better because the fundamental structure of Google understands it better. So its learning basis is always growing and learning there. So that's how we started to look at everything, is like, is there a strong foundation in where we want it to go from any one of these AIs? And then we'll start to utilize it.
Yeah, and at a high level, I think it's so important. Everywhere you turn the news on, and people are talking about the downsides of AI and this and that and the other thing. But I think the reality of it is AI is here. AI is part of the fabric of everyone's life, and it's gonna become more a component of everybody's lives. And I think harnessing AI and understanding how you can use it to your advantage and get ahead with the technology is key, because by not embracing it, I think you're ignoring a huge trend that is coming, whether we like it or not. And I think it's just a matter of being on the right side of that trend, and I
But
think
I hate
that's
I really dislike it though when companies think that they should just put AI in. And this is a really big mistake, I think, is that when you're doing it for the wrong reasons and not doing it because your market needs it. If you're not
absolutely.
able to deliver a great service to them or a great product to them with what you've got today, or it's too costly and you need to use AI to be able to deliver that, that's the perfect solution. And that's the thing, that if I could say anything about how we developed everything that we did, the market absolutely wanted it and needed it before we put it into place. So we would beta test this thing until clients were begging us to make it mainstream, to make it so that they could use it every day. They could use it with all their episodes. They could, that's when you know you're really onto something, and you're going to have something that's sustainable and profitable.
Yeah,
If you
and
really are doing it just to like sell your company and be, they see through that.
yeah, absolutely. And, sitting on this end of the mic, I speak to so many companies, and, clearly the companies that are putting out solutions to real problems and using AI to help with the solution, those are the companies that I think are going to be lasting. And, the capability of AI to extract information from large data sets is just mind-boggling.
It blows my mind every day. I love it, and I personally in the company, I just actually, I know you announced me as the CEO, and and I kind of still leave that role on the public side, but I
Sure.
actually, about a month ago, we switched roles, and Tom is now the CEO, and I am the strategic director of AI. And what we are, because we are shifting so
Oh,
much
that's
of the
exciting.
stuff we've been doing behind the scenes, the innovations we've been creating, we're now bringing front facing. So every quarter, we're bringing out all kinds of front facing new things. The first thing we brought out is our promotion program that we're doing. And then we're bringing out then the DIY production services, so you can title things yourself and write your own descriptions. And I can guarantee, because we've been testing them behind the scenes for over a year, that ours is better than any third party out there. And so better than you taking your own episode and going to Bard or ChatGPT and doing it.
Sure.
We've taught it to learn you.
I love
And
it. And
so, so we're super excited about all those things. But the rollout of it, that's why we had to switch roles, because my whole life is consumed with that and not just running the company.
and that's a great reason, at a high level. So that brings me to a couple of quick questions. So are there any recent things on your roadmap? I'm sure you have just so many things that you're working on that you want to get live, but any recent releases on your roadmap that you're really particularly excited about and want to share with our community?
Yeah, so we just hit as we're recording this, we're hitting the 1 year anniversary of us working on our promotion program, which I absolutely love. So we beta tested it we conceptualized it a year ago with another partner, and
Sure.
we started to build it out, and we tested it for 5 months before we made it, offered it to all of our clients. And then we offered it to all of our clients at the end of last year, and now we're offering it publicly to anyone who would like to come on and try it. But our promotion program,
Right.
we realized that podcasters were struggling. There's so many people out there telling you, oh, they all need to advertising dollars, but at the end of the day, they won't even make $100. And so
Right.
it's not of value to get advertisers. But what is a value is if I can get podcast listeners, if I can get somebody to see my podcast, know my podcast exists, I have to do it outside of Spotify and Apple. I can't just create it and they will come. Like, it doesn't work like that, right? I
Right.
can't just put it out there and assume Spotify will make sure that my podcast is found. Somebody actually has to search for it in order for it to be found. And even that, the search engine that is Apple and Spotify stinks. It's terrible. It's like
Yeah.
archaic, it's just Boolean.
Sure.
It's not any better than that. They don't have AI over there. And so it's not really useful in serving up podcasts. So I've got to reach listeners out there somewhere. So you can spend a lot of money advertising on Google, doing social media posts, and the conversion rate is lower and lower and lower. And you can do a bunch of emails, but then you got to get a fresh email list. And you got to know if they're opening their email, are they readers or are they listeners? So that wasn't working for people. So the conversion rate from someone getting an email to someone becoming a listener was not a 1-to-1, right?
Right.
And so we realized that we had to come up with some other ways for them. And so we developed this promotion program where we create a 15-second, I know it's short, a 15-second spot that is both visual and auditory. So you have an audio message, you have an audio clip, and a visual of your show. And it could be a special visual. It could be a visual from a specific episode. It could be a visual that says that, like our show was sponsored by HP, right? So it could say that too. So you could have a co-branded one, but you have a visual and you have an audio message, and it runs on mobile apps because mobile app users are more likely to be listeners. And they will just click through, go to your landing page, your website, or your podcast page, or any kind of page where you're really promoting how to subscribe to the podcast. That's what you really want there.
Right.
And so from there, we've been seeing a lift. So we started out with having to do 20 clips of a show. So 20 15-second spots to make it with enough variety. And of that, you'll end up doing about 200 to 500,000 impressions, if you want to think of it, plays of that. The great part about doing it in mobile apps is they can't skip the 15-second. That's why we set it at 15 seconds. That's the minimum that they require it. And so they can't skip it. So they have to. So even if they're trying they want to get to the next thing. They want to get to the mortgage calculator. They want to get to, the stats about how their blood pressure is, whatever the app is for, right?
Whatever it is that they're looking
whatever it's for. They have to sit there for 15 seconds and wait for it if they're not going to pay for the paid version of the app, right? So there's a guarantee that they have to watch it. So as they watch it, they're seeing your cover art. They're seeing the information about your show. And if they do have the sound on and they're listening, they could get intrigued. And then they click. If they click on it and they go through to the landing page, we track those as well. So what we do is say for about 500,000 impressions, we see about 500 to 600 clicks through to your podcast page, to your website, to wherever that might be going to. We can also send it to a YouTube channel. And so we do that. But from there, we see a 10 to 50%, depending on the category and the relevance to the apps. So sometimes people's content are not as relevant to the apps as
Sure.
they should be. It takes us sometimes a little time to finesse it, like about 30 to 60 days, like for us to adjust that to get it to where we want it to be. But if you can get about 600 click-throughs, you're going to start to see 50% pull. And so over time, so we did this. I was one of the test shows on the Binge Factor. The Binge Factor grew 50% listeners year over year, or period over period. So 5
Sure.
months over 5 months. So I have twice as many listeners as I started with. And that would be 15% compounded each month. It was
That's
amazing.
crazy.
It was
Yeah.
crazy numbers. And those listeners become binge listeners. They listen to all our stuff. They start showing up. We're now seeing a boost to our live coaching call because we announce that on every episode.
Sure.
So like there's things that is happening from that are directly related to lead generating growth, but leads that chose to find me, that
Yeah, and
chose to
engaged
click that,
listeners tell
engaged.
other people.
Right.
And yeah.
So that's the new program, and it's super exciting. And we do it for what is about 33 cents a click. So if you think
Wow.
it's not on the impression side, but on the click-through
Yeah.
side, it's about 33 cents a click, which is pretty good rates nowadays, considering how much it costs to advertise that and social and everywhere else.
Sure.
And that doesn't guarantee growth to your show, obviously, but we are not seeing it anything below 10%. Just not.
So that's something new that you've released in the past
we've
year?
released it. We call it the podcast promotion program, the Podetize promotion program. And you get hosting and you get our coaching and you get everything that we already offer to everyone. The ad mixing that I was talking about earlier, all that comes with it. So it's like a monthly subscription and you just get everything.
So now that you're focused on, I guess what I would say is the future and AI and all of that, what are some of the projects that you have on the roadmap that you're working on that you're really
So
excited
all of those people
about?
in the program are going to get the AI stuff first. So they get to
Sure.
test all that first. So so in about a quarter, you'll be able to title all your episodes. And what we found is this: by the time it gets through about 8 to 10 episodes, it will be right the first time it gives you a title. So it won't even be like, oh, I got to regenerate. No, they'll be right the first time. And so it really gets you. It's very customized. They're all SEO packed, like really great words like that. So that will happen. Descriptions will happen that way too. So it'll suggest episode descriptions. Too often right now, the podcast episode description generators, the AIs out there that are third-party stuff that you go log into and do them, or even the ones that are a part of some hosting companies, everyone says, in today's episode. What a waste of space.
Yeah.
Ours doesn't do it. It treats it like a real lead paragraph that you would write. Good journalism. And so so those two things will be the first things that come in. Tags, because we're finding that YouTube tags are becoming more and more critical, especially on your shorts. So it will generate tags. Those things will be coming. And you can use you can generate a version that will be for YouTube as well. So you can have two different versions, a YouTube version and a podcast version if you want. So you don't have to have them be the same. And so those will be the first thing that comes out the first quarter. And we have, but it's just about to be deployed because we're right at the end of Q1 when we're recording this, but it's about to be into the live version of it. You can get transcriptions. So you can get our version of AI transcriptions for your podcast just by hosting with us.
Well, it sounds like over at Podetize, a lot has happened over the recent few months, and there's quite a bit coming up in the future.
And our partner who's been deploying the ads on the mobile devices, we convinced them after this went so well in the testing that we convinced them that they needed to work with their mobile apps and do a much better matching. So we could match our clips to the type of app better. And so they don't have that on their end yet, but they're working that out. The apps don't have it. It's not like we couldn't do it, but they don't have it. So right now you just generally serve. So we think you'll get the impressions way down, but your conversion rates will go way up. So your click-through will go. That I'm hoping we'll be able to use AI for by the end of the year.
Yeah, it's very exciting. There's just so many opportunities and so many different things coming. No, that's great. Well, I really appreciate your taking the time out to join us on Software Spotlight this week. It's been very interesting and I'm sure engaging, and I'm sure a lot of the techies that like to listen to our show are eating this up and enjoying it as well as myself. So
Oh, well,
thank you so
good. I'm
much.
glad to tech and geek out with you. So
That's great.
it's my
Uh,
favorite thing to get to talk about the, features and how to's and
I love it. I love it. Well, coming up on our next episode, Sonia Kuto, who's the founder of Converge Digital Solutions, another SaaS company, but this time in the menu space. They have a solution called Menu Sano, a B2B platform for restaurants. She'll be joining us, and she has over 15 years of experience in the food industry. Sonia will discuss how Menu Sano's innovative technology streamlines menu management and compliance for enterprise clients. So be sure to bookmark our I guess go to our YouTube live stream that's coming up on Monday. And the live stream is at Software Oasis on YouTube. Be sure to visit our website, softwareoasis.com, to access our free weekly software newsletter and sign up for our upcoming software webinar series. So, once again, Tracy Hazard from Podetize, thank you for joining us on the Software Spotlight this week.
thank you so much, Michael. It's been a pleasure.